All right, ready to dive into something a little different? We're going to tackle the power of silence.
Which is funny, talking about silence on a podcast. But that's what makes it so interesting, I think.
Right. The irony isn't lost on me. Okay, so for this deep dive, we're focusing on this one YouTube video called Be Silent, You Will Get Everything in Life, Joe Dispenza Motivation.
Oh, yeah. I saw that one. Pretty bold claims, right?
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. It's like embracing silence is the key to, well, everything. Creativity, abundance, even like some kind of spiritual awakening.
It's definitely attention grabbing. It sort of makes you want to see what they're really getting at.
Exactly. So let's jump in. The video starts by, well, it actually describes silence as like a gateway or a doorway to unlocking potential.
I like that imagery.
Right. It's pretty poetic.
Yeah.
Especially when you contrast it with all the noise of the modern world. We're constantly bombarded by something.
And that's where the neuroscience part comes in. The source ties this idea of silence to how our brains actually work.
Okay. Break that down for me.
Well, think about it. All day long, your brain's processing tons of stimuli, right? Like sights, sounds, information overload. And that creates all these neural pathways.
Pathways.
Yeah, like think of them as roads in your brain. The more you travel down a certain road, the more established it becomes. So if you're constantly stressed or anxious, those pathways get really well worn.
Ah, I see.
But when you embrace silence, those pathways get a break. It's like giving your brain a chance to create some new roads, ones that lead to more peace, more clarity.
Okay, so it's like hitting the reset button on your brain, making space for some new, hopefully positive connections to form.
Exactly. And the video goes even further. It even touches on quantum physics a little bit.
Quantum physics. Hold on, are we going full woo-woo here?
Well, maybe a little. But it's interesting to consider. The basic idea is that our thoughts and emotions, they're not just happening in our heads. They actually send out vibrations, like energy.
Okay, I'm listening.
So if your mind is racing, if your thoughts are all over the place, you're putting out that kind of chaotic energy into the world. But when you cultivate inner silence, your energy shifts. It becomes more, coherent. And according to the source, that can influence the things you attract into your life.
So you're saying that by quieting our minds, we can actually change our reality.
Well, that's the claim. Whether it's, full-on quantum physics at work or not, it's an interesting concept to consider.
All right, I'm intrigued. But let's get practical here. How do we actually do this? How do we find that inner silence, especially with everything going on in our lives? Does the video give any guidance on that?
It does, and it's surprisingly simple. No, you don't need to go live in a cave or anything. It's about setting aside just a few minutes each day. Could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you can manage.
Okay, that seems doable. But what do you do during those few minutes?
Close your eyes, focus on your breath, and just observe your thoughts. No need to judge them, just let them come and go.
So it's not about forcing our minds to be blank, just sort of witnessing the thoughts without getting carried away by them.
Exactly. And with practice, you'll find it gets easier to create that inner space of silence.
All right, I'm willing to give it a shot. But let's say we've carved out those few minutes, we've quieted our minds. What happens next? The video mentions this thing called coherence. What's that all about?
Coherence, as the source describes it, is like getting everything aligned. Your thoughts, your emotions, your physical sensations. It's like creating inner harmony.
Inner harmony sounds nice, but how do we actually achieve that?
Well, the video doesn't give a step-by-step guide. It's more about, I guess you could say, creating the right conditions for coherence to emerge. Like, through practicing silence, you're starting to declutter your mind, which allows for more space, more clarity.
So it's not something you force, it's more like a natural byproduct of quieting the mental noise.
That's how I understand it. And the video makes some pretty big claims about what happens when you reach this state of coherence, like you start experiencing synchronicities.
Synchronicities? What, like winning the lottery or something?
Well, maybe not that dramatic, but it's the idea that things start falling into place, like the universe is conspiring to give you what you need. The right people show up at the right time, opportunities present themselves.
Hold on, are we talking about manifesting here, like the law of attraction and all that?
Yeah, there are definitely some parallels there. But even if you're not into the whole manifestation thing, I think the underlying principle is interesting. When you're more internally aligned, you're probably more open to recognizing opportunities that you might have missed before.
So it's not necessarily about the universe magically rearranging itself, but about us becoming more receptive to what's already out there.
Exactly. It's a shift in perspective, a way of becoming more aware of the possibilities around us.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. And the video doesn't just stop at personal growth. It takes this idea even further. It claims that this whole silence thing can have a positive impact on our relationships, our communication, even global consciousness.
Now, how does it make that leap? Well, think about it. When you're more present, more centered within yourself, you naturally listen more deeply. You communicate more clearly.
Yeah.
And that creates more genuine connections with the people around you.
Okay, so if you're less distracted by your own thoughts, you can actually focus on the other person and really hear what they're saying.
Right. And if you multiply that effect across individuals, well, it's not hard to imagine how that could contribute to a more harmonious energy overall.
So we're talking like a ripple effect, where individual silence can somehow contribute to global peace. That's a pretty big claim.
It is, but there's actually research on things like collective consciousness and the impact of things like meditation on social harmony. It's a pretty fascinating area of study.
Okay, color me intrigued. But before we get too carried away with all the potential benefits, I gotta play devil's advocate here for a second. The video paints a very optimistic picture, but are there any downsides, any cautions to consider with all this silence?
That's a great question, and one that the source doesn't fully explore. While it talks about all these wonderful benefits, it doesn't really delve into the potential challenges, but it's definitely something to consider.
So too much silence could actually be a bad thing.
Not necessarily bad, but maybe not the most productive approach. You know, imagine if we were all constantly retreating into silence, we might miss out on opportunities to engage with the world, to learn from challenges, to build relationships. It's all about finding that sweet spot.
Right, balance is key.
Exactly. And there's also the risk of, well, misinterpreting what we hear in the silence. We might mistake our own biases or fears for some kind of higher guidance.
So critical thinking is still important, even or maybe especially when we're exploring these more spiritual concepts.
Absolutely. It's about finding that balance between inner wisdom and external feedback. Trusting our intuition, but also questioning our assumptions.
So it sounds like this whole silence thing, it's a powerful tool, but it's not a magic bullet.
And that's a crucial takeaway. This deep dive is all about giving you the information to decide what resonates with you. What parts of this message are worth exploring further in your own life?
Great point. We're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to uncover in this video. Speaking of uncovering, in part 2, we'll delve into the video's discussion on the specific benefits of silence, like how it can improve our relationships, transform our work life, and even impact our health.
And we'll also explore some of those potential pitfalls we just touched on. Stay tuned.
You got it. Until then, try embracing a little bit of quiet. You never know what you might discover. All right, so we've talked about how silence can be this powerful tool, but how does it actually play out in our everyday lives? Like, the video claims it can impact our relationships, our work, even our finances. Are we really talking about a complete life makeover just by, being quiet for a few minutes?
Well, this source certainly doesn't shy away from making bold claims. But let's break it down, see what we can find.
Yeah.
One of the areas the video really focuses on is relationships. It suggests that when we bring more presence, more compassion to our interactions, we actually communicate better. Like, we listen more deeply, we express ourselves more clearly.
Okay, I can see that. But how does silence actually help us do that? It's not like just sitting in silence magically makes us, better communicators.
Right, it's not some kind of magic spell or anything. But think about it this way. When your mind is constantly buzzing with thoughts, worries, distractions, it's hard to truly be present with someone else.
I know that feeling.
Right. But when you cultivate inner silence, you create this space, this mental space to actually see and hear the other person. You're not just waiting for your turn to talk. You're actually with them.
So it's about decluttering our minds to make room for that real connection.
Exactly. And that genuine connection, well, people are drawn to that. It's like a magnet for positivity.
Okay, so that makes sense for personal relationships. But what about work? I mean, the video claims silence can make us more creative and productive. How does that work?
Well, the video talks about tapping into this flow state through silence. Remember that idea of coherence we were talking about?
Yeah, like getting everything aligned, right?
Right. So when we're in that state of inner harmony, creative solutions seem to come more easily. It's like we're aligned with a source of inspiration that's, bigger than ourselves.
So instead of forcing ideas, we're allowing them to come to us. It's like getting out of our own way.
Exactly. And get this, the video even suggests that financial abundance can follow from this state of coherence. Like, it's not about chasing money, but about aligning with our true purpose and allowing prosperity to flow naturally.
Hold on, you're saying that silence can actually make us wealthier. Now I'm really skeptical.
Now, it's definitely important to take these claims with a grain of salt. Like,
Yeah.
the video doesn't offer any, hard evidence to back this up.
Right, it's not like silence equals instant riches.
Exactly. But there is a growing body of research on mindfulness and meditation, things that are very much aligned with this practice of silence. And those practices have been shown to have a positive impact on well-being, stress reduction, even decision-making.
So while the source's claims about manifesting wealth might be a stretch, there's at least some scientific basis for the idea that inner silence can lead to, positive outcomes in our lives. It's not just some feel-good new age thing.
Right. And speaking of positive impacts, the video goes even further. It claims that silence can profoundly affect our health.
Okay, in what way?
The idea is that by cultivating inner silence, we're essentially giving our bodies a chance to relax, to heal.
So it's not like silence is some magical cure-all, but more like creating the conditions for our bodies to function better?
That's it. The video emphasizes how chronic stress is a major contributor to so many illnesses. So by reducing stress, by cultivating inner silence, we're allowing our bodies to restore themselves to repair.
So it's like hitting the pause button on that whole stress cycle, giving our bodies a much-needed break.
Exactly. And that break, that can have a ripple effect on our overall well-being, physically and mentally. But the video doesn't stop there. It goes on to link silence to spiritual awakening.
Spiritual awakening. Now we're getting into some deep stuff.
It is deep. But the video doesn't necessarily mean mystical experiences or anything like that. It describes it as a process of recognizing our interconnectedness, like realizing that we're not just isolated individuals.
So it's more about shifting our perspective from a sense of, separation to a sense of unity.
Yeah, that's it. And the source suggests that this realization can bring a profound sense of peace, of purpose to our lives.
Okay, I can see that. But is there any evidence to support these claims about spiritual awakening? Or is it just speculation?
Admittedly, the video doesn't offer any specific scientific evidence for this, but it draws on wisdom from various spiritual traditions, Buddhism, Hinduism, Sufism. These are traditions that have been exploring the nature of consciousness, the human experience, for centuries.
So it's not about taking these claims as literal truth, but more about exploring them with an open mind, seeing if they resonate with our own experiences.
Exactly. And speaking of exploring, we can't overlook the potential pitfalls and challenges that might come up on this whole journey of silence. I mean, the video focuses a lot on the benefits, but it's important to acknowledge that it's not always going to be easy.
Yeah, earlier we talked about the risks of misinterpreting our intuition or becoming too isolated. Are there any other challenges the video brings up?
Well, one thing it acknowledges is that life doesn't magically become perfect just because we're embracing silence. We're still going to face challenges. We're still going to have difficult emotions.
So it's not about becoming emotionless or avoiding negative experiences?
Absolutely not. Actually, the video talks about learning to navigate those difficult emotions with more skill, more grace. It even uses this term emotional elegance.
Emotional elegance? What does that even mean?
Well, think of it as developing the capacity to experience our feelings fully without being controlled by them. It's about recognizing that our emotions, even the painful ones, they're actually valuable sources of information.
So instead of trying to, suppress or avoid those negative emotions, we should actually lean into them. That seems counterintuitive.
It might seem that way, but think about it. When we resist our emotions, they tend to get stronger, they control our behavior.
Yeah.
But when we create the space to observe them without judgment, well, we can actually learn from them. We can make more conscious choices.
And how does silence fit into all of this?
Silence provides that space for observation. When our minds are quiet, we can actually witness our emotions without getting completely swept away by them. It's like watching a storm from a safe distance. You can see its power without getting caught in the chaos.
Ah, I like that analogy. So it's not about becoming emotionless, but about becoming more emotionally intelligent.
Precisely. And this increased emotional intelligence, well, that can have a huge impact on all areas of our lives. How we handle conflict, how we make decisions. It can even enhance our creativity, our problem-solving skills.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all connects. So by embracing silence, we're not just creating inner peace, but we're also developing these valuable skills that can really benefit us in, every area of life.
Exactly. And that brings us to another point the video makes about the power of silence.
Yeah.
It can enhance our intuition.
Intuition, you mean like that gut feeling we sometimes get?
Yes. The video suggests that as we quiet the chatter of our minds, we become more attuned to our inner knowing, that wisdom that's always there.
Okay, but how do we know if it's really our intuition speaking or just, wishful thinking? It seems like there's a lot of room for misinterpretation there.
That's a valid concern. And to be honest, the video doesn't really address that fully, but I think it's important to remember that cultivating intuition, it's a process. It takes practice.
Right, it's not like we suddenly become, psychic or something.
Exactly. It takes discernment. The more we practice, the more familiar we become with the voice of our intuition, the better we are at distinguishing it from, the noise of our fears, our desires.
So it's about developing a deeper level of self-awareness, learning to trust ourselves and our inner guidance.
That's it. And that self-awareness can lead to making more authentic choices, feeling a greater sense of alignment with our purpose. But it's also important to remember that this journey of silence, it can be challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's not about, achieving some perfect state of perpetual quiet. It's about consistently coming back to that inner space of stillness, even when things get tough.
So it's a practice, not a destination.
Absolutely. And that practice can be hard sometimes. We get discouraged when our minds won't quiet down or when life throws us a curveball and we feel like we've lost our peace. But the key is to just keep coming back, keep practicing, keep returning to that quiet space within.
So it's about building resilience, learning to navigate the ups and downs of life with more grace.
Exactly. And the video suggests that resilience, it's cultivated through this consistent practice of silence.
Okay, this is all making sense, but I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this idea that the power of silence can actually ripple outwards, affecting not just ourselves, but the world around us? The video touches on that a bit.
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting. The video suggests that as we cultivate inner peace, inner presence, it naturally radiates outwards. It has a calming effect on others.
So it's like that saying, be the change you want to see in the world. Like our individual inner work can actually contribute to a more peaceful, harmonious world.
That's the idea. And the video even goes as far as to say that cultivating inner silence can contribute to the evolution of human consciousness as a whole.
Wow, that's a big claim. But it is a pretty fascinating thought, right? That if silence can be so transformative on a personal level, what could happen if more and more people embraced it?
That's a question worth pondering for sure. And perhaps that's one of the key takeaways from this whole deep dive. It's an invitation to consider the ripple effects of our own inner work, to recognize that our personal transformations, they can have a far-reaching impact.
Absolutely. And all of this ties back to the video's central message, that within each of us, there's this profound capacity for peace, for wisdom, for creativity.
And that by accessing that inner silence, we can unlock our full potential and contribute to a more harmonious world.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored, all these potential benefits of silence for our relationships, our work, our health, our spiritual growth. But I'm curious, what stood out to you as the most, fascinating or surprising thing from the video?
What I found really compelling was how the source kind of weaves together science and spirituality. Like it draws on concepts from quantum physics, from neuroscience, but it also embraces ancient wisdom, mystical experiences, spiritual traditions.
It's like it's bridging the gap between the rational and the intuitive, the material and the spiritual.
Exactly. And that's something we're seeing more and more these days, this desire for a more holistic understanding of ourselves, of the world.
And I think that's what makes this video so interesting. It's not just offering practical tips for self-improvement, but it's inviting us to explore these bigger questions about, the nature of reality, our place in the universe.
Right. And that's a journey that's, it's worth taking, even if it means stepping outside our comfort zones, challenging our assumptions. And speaking of journeys, we'll continue this one in part 3, where we'll dive even deeper into the transformative potential of silence and explore how we can integrate this practice into our everyday lives.
Okay, so we've explored all these amazing potential benefits of embracing silence, from, deeper relationships to even spiritual awakenings. But let's be real, most of us don't live in a silent retreat. How do we actually bring this into our everyday lives, without becoming hermits?
Right, good point. The video doesn't exactly advocate for total isolation or anything. It's more about finding those little pockets of silence throughout the day.
Little pockets? Like what?
Like even just taking a few conscious breaths before you answer an email, or maybe turning off the radio during your commute.
Ah, okay. So it's not about needing to escape to a mountaintop. It's about creating those mindful moments, even amidst the chaos of daily life.
That's it. And it's about, I think, shifting our mindset. Like, instead of seeing silence as something we have to do, it's something we get to do. A chance to, reconnect with ourselves, tap into that inner peace, that creativity.
I like that. It's a good reframe. But the video also talks about silence being this key to unlocking our full potential. That's a pretty bold statement. How does it connect those dots between silence and actually achieving our goals?
Well, the video suggests that when we quiet the mind, we can actually hear our inner guidance better. That intuitive voice that kind of knows what's best for us.
Ah, so it's like clearing out the static so we can tune into our own inner compass. Makes sense. But what if you're not even sure what direction you want to go in? Like, sometimes I feel like I'm just going through the motions, not really connected to any bigger purpose.
That's where this practice of silence can be really, really powerful. By creating that space for reflection, we allow those deeper desires, those values, to kind of bubble up to the surface.
So we're giving ourselves permission to ask those big questions like, what do I really want? What brings me joy? What kind of impact do I want to have?
Exactly. And it's not like a one-time thing. The video emphasizes that it's an ongoing process, this self-discovery.
So the more we cultivate silence, the more we understand ourselves and what we're really here to do.
Yeah, that's the idea. Our sense of purpose can become clearer over time.
Okay, I'm seeing how this all ties together now. The silence, the coherence, the intuition, the purpose. It's like a whole system for living a more fulfilling life. But, the video also talks about the power of silence to actually create change in the world, not just in our own lives. How does that work?
Well, the source suggests that our inner state, it doesn't just stay within us. It has a ripple effect. So as we cultivate more peace, more presence within ourselves, it naturally radiates outwards, influencing the people around us.
Right, like that idea of be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. And the video takes it even a step further, suggesting that as more and more people embrace this inner transformation, it can actually create a shift in collective consciousness.
Yeah.
Leading to, a more compassionate, more harmonious world.
That's a pretty powerful idea, but it also feels like a big responsibility. It's like the video is saying that our individual choices can impact the fate of humanity.
It is a thought-provoking concept, for sure. But it's not presented as a burden, more like an empowering invitation. Like, by taking responsibility for our own inner state, we're actually contributing to something much bigger than ourselves.
It's like we're all connected, and our individual choices create these ripple effects that extend way beyond just us.
Exactly. And that's why this whole idea of silence, it's so relevant, especially now. In a world that's so noisy, so distracting, so divided, it's more important than ever to create that space, that inner stillness.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the power of silence, what's the one key takeaway you want listeners to walk away with?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that silence is a gift. It's a resource that's always available to us. It's not something we have to earn. It's already within us, waiting to be discovered.
And it's not about being silent all the time. It's about those mindful moments we can create, those pockets of stillness where we can just, reconnect with ourselves, tap into our intuition, and find that deeper sense of peace and purpose.
Well said. And as the video reminds us, in silence, we find everything we need. It's not something we chase, it's already there.
So folks, next time you're feeling overwhelmed, disconnected, remember this. Remember the power of silence. Take a deep breath, close your eyes, and just be. You might be surprised at what you find.
And on that note, we'll leave you to embrace the quiet. Until next time, keep diving deep.